Chapter 6. Males and females of the first and second levels were kept separate at the line. While we shared certain docents and outside training areas, each group had its own living quarters and facilities. It was explained to us that until we became disciplined in our relations with the complementary gender, we would make better progress. When I asked one Tarnow how we would learn this discipline if there was no interaction between the sexes, he blinked and mumbled something about distractions. When I asked what this meant, I was told that I had a loose mouth and was given 5 days of hygiene chamber maintenance as punishment. You don't know enough to ask so many questions. I started asking him how I could learn without asking questions when he pulled out his merking stick, so named because they are used to beat mercs, which is what first level students are called, and gave me a whack in the leg and told me to get to the storeroom for cleaning implements. When the pain passed through me, I looked around for group support. You can be sure that this time I wanted to be accompanied by as many of my mates as possible. There were 5 students in the room, and when I made my request, 4 of them had excuses ranging from barely plausible to outright suspicious. 3 Lubach, the biggest in our section, and the one I most wanted to go with me, said, "The section leader's right, you talk too much." Unfortunately, the only student left was the quiet 8 Lubach, who kept completely to himself. He agreed to accompany me and quickly moved to the door. He was short and slender, and his dark eyes and long lashes made him look younger than the rest of us. He was almost too delicate for a Cardassian. I was not encouraged, but I had no choice. I went through the door, unconsciously imitating the gruff voice from my previous experience. "All right, all I need is an extra pair of eyes. Just keep them open and let's get the job done." 8 said nothing and followed me. The trip to the storeroom was uneventful, and we received our supplies without incident. On the way back, however, we noticed that an intersection of 2 corridors was much darker than before. 8, who was walking behind, touched my shoulder. "I think we forgot something," he said with uncharacteristic loudness. He motioned for me to follow. We backtracked to the previous intersection, made a right turn, and continued down another corridor until we came to a 3rd intersection. He stopped, took the cleaning implements from me, and carefully put them down. He chose one that was attached to the pole and handed it to me. He took a shorter implement, looked around the corner, down the darkened corridor, and quickly moved to the other side. I started to follow him, but he made it clear that I should stay where I was and wait. All during this, 8 was quiet and controlled, and as sure of himself as if he had done this many times. How did he know where he was going? How did he... When we heard his footsteps coming down the corridor from the direction 8 had anticipated, he held up 2 fingers indicating how many people. We kept out of sight from either side of the corridor as they approached. His face was dark, intense with concentration. His brow ridges, unusually pronounced, cast shadows over his eyes. My heart began to pound when I realized what 8 was planning. These were older students, certainly, but he expressed no hesitation, no doubt. Just as the 2 unsuspecting students passed, the one closest to me caught sight of me, but it was too late. We were on them, and we both knew exactly what to do. First, we disarmed them of their merking sticks with blows to their hands and arms. Then we laid into them with such ferocity that they fled down the corridor. "I'll show you who's pudding," I started to follow. "No!" Again, the strength of his voice shocked me. I stopped, and before I could ask why, we heard a high-pitched whistle screech out the emergency signal for immediate assistance that we had just learned in a field training class. We grabbed our implements and ran as fast as we could all the way back to our section. But he burst through the door, flustered, out of breath. Most of the group was present and wanted to know what had happened. In my excitement, I started to tell the story when 8 dropped a pail with implements and grabbed my attention. He looked sharply. What? I stammered. I followed his nod to the door where one Tarn was giving me a hard look. 8 moved to his sleeping area and quietly busied himself in his private apartment. I immediately shut up on the influence and turned them into a hygiene chamber. Shortly after when we were alone, I punched a code. I was about to comment on his rudeness when he turned back and handed it to me. It was a diagram of the rooms and corridors on the storeroom floor. We'd all been given schematics of the Bamaran spaces. I assumed no one paid any attention. I don't know. I didn't know then if I could ever call Abe a friend. Something about him was strange and impenetrable. But it didn't matter. At least I knew there was one person in my section I could trust. How I had misjudged him. It was obvious that Abe had what Cardassians call a ferocious spirit, and that I could learn a great deal from him. Can you take a couple more pages? No, I don't want to beat you guys up, you know. And also, a couple more pages, as you can hear from my voice. I'm going south, that's okay. Much of the focus of Cardassian education, especially during the early years, is exhausting and merciless physical training. The training area on Deep Space Nine always amused me. People struggling by themselves with weights and machines in front of a mirror. The results seem more about strengthening the appearance of the body rather than the fiber of the character. Our training centers on the trial of one person's skill matched against the skill of another. But where Klingons regard physical combat as the primary test of mastery, we begin at that level and then progress to the subtler methods of confrontation. There are enough levels of expertise for 2 lifetimes, but a student has to master each one before moving on to the next. It was during these trials that we came to truly know each other. We assembled in the burning sands of the pit, where each day we had long eye, hand, and foot sessions. The pit was the most feared training area at Bamaran. It truly took the measure of each student. These initial sessions were the fundamental underpinnings of all subsequent training. Basically, the concept was to teach the hands, the eyes, and the feet to operate independently in order to function in countless combinations called stratagems controlled by the brain. The stratagems ranged from simple fight combinations of kicks and punches to complicated dances that resembled religious trance. Kalix, our martial docent, was a gnarled old man with one glass eye. It was rumored that he was an infantry guard who was demoted because he refused the privilege of executive status and put himself in danger with his men. It was after his demotion that he dedicated himself to mastering stratagems. Of course, we called him Kalix behind his back, since that was the name of the whirling, muscular beast of many appendages from our childhood stories. Like the fabled Kalix, our docent was capable of blinding displays of fighting prowess, and yet at rest, he was as remarkable as a rock. On the first day in the pit, we stood in formation for what seemed like hours while he simply stared at us. I was drenched in my fluids, nauseated by the baking sun. 6 Lubak fainted, and when 5 made a move to tend him, Kalix spit in his face. As with humans, this is a humiliating, demeaning gesture. We were stunned. Step forward, 5. His voice was jarringly gentle, with a half-smile replaced with a blank mask. 5 just stared at him, spit dripping from his face with sweat. He behaved as if the docent had spoken in an alien tongue. The mixed signals had confused us all. Stand in front of me, Kalix. 5 was compact, and his trained athletic body moved carefully in anticipation of a trick. He stopped in front of Kalix, whose half-smile revealed both missing teeth. I want you to get me off of my place without losing yours, Kalix explained. 5 seemed transfixed by the half-smile. I wasn't sure he understood the request. I wasn't sure I understood. We remained in formation while they stood facing each other. This standoff lasted